All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I want to give a shout out to Wombat. Rest in peace. No, he's fine. He's just not playing Swago anymore. But this video was kind of inspired by something he had said a little bit ago, and it's been sitting with me, and the more I've thought about it, the more I'm kind of buying into it, that Ahsoka is sort of Lord Failure 2.0. She really, I think, has struggled to have the same impact on the game that Leia had, that Jabba had, that Jedi Master Kenobi had, and she feels a lot more like Lord Vader did. Where you're a little bit underwhelmed, you're a little bit like, is this character really that important for me to chase? Is it, it's very expensive and I don't know that I can stomach it. And so we're going to kind of talk about this. Why does she feel this way? Why I think the Pirate Galactic legend will not be this way, and kind of show some data that kind of proves this thought process. So guys, please like and subscribe, comment down below. Let's give a shout out to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you're ever interested, that link is below, along with a link to our Discord server. Go check it out. I really appreciate all these guys just putting their faith in me to bring them good quality content, whether it's trusting me with their roster reviews, helping them with mods, Omicrons, or even just general life advice on why The Acolyte is the worst series that Star Wars has ever made, and it's one of the worst TV show I've probably ever watched in my life. They come here for that as well. So I appreciate all of you guys. Again, link below, more importantly to the Discord. So let's get in here and let's talk about, Lord Failure 2.0. All right, so we are definitely being a little bit harsh to Ahsoka, right? We're absolutely being a little bit harsh, but we kind of need to be. This character just feels very much like a letdown, like Master, like Apprentice. There's a lot of similarities between these two units, and I think it's worth kind of talking about that to an extent. I'm not going to say that it's like, oh my gosh, everything's, but it's worth talking about this to an extent. It's worth talking about what this looks like, right? So I think it boils down to 3 reasons. And we're going to compare back to Lord Vader at times to show what I mean. So let's start with Lord Vader. When he came into the game, he was 4 Relic 8s. You needed 4 Relic 8s and 4 new marquee units. That was a lot at the time. This was a crazy, crazy hike in, requirements. And with Ahsoka, very similarly, you had 3 Relic 9s, 2 Relic 8s, 6 marquee units, and a conquest unit to boot. So the requirements jumped up significantly. I mean, this is an insane requirement. When you really sit down and you think about it, it is really, really crazy how many things we need for Ahsoka and at the relic levels that they're required at. And the big thing that both of those GLs have in common is that it's massive changes comparative to their predecessor. For Ahsoka, for Lord Vader, Jedi Master Kenobi was 1 marquee unit in Bo-Katan Kryze and 2 Relic 8s in General Kenobi and Grandmaster Yoda. For Leia Organa, it was 1 Relic 8 requirement in R2-D2. We also had 4 marquees, but those 4 marquees didn't feel as bad when you only have to do 1 Relic 8. But to jump up to 3 Relic 9s and 2 Relic 8s and the 6 marquees and a conquest to boot, it just really felt like a grab, right? It felt like we just went from, A to Z. That there was just, this was an insane hike, an insane increase. And much like Lord Vader, the community kind of responded this way, right? And I want to share this screen capture that I have. This is one of my Google spreadsheets that we're actually going to be attempting to kind of, I'd say, keep up a bit with, where we're going to kind of look at this spreadsheet a few ways. So we're going to open this up here once it decides to open up. All right. So, and I'm going to move the fat face out of the way. So this is Relic player data, right? This is pulled from swago.gg. It was pulled on June 17th. And why that's important, I'm going to update this every so often, whether it's every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is. I'll update it every so often. And you can see like Depa, Mace, and Smee, there are zeros of, which I like that. Like, that's good. That gives it some, authenticity that when this was pulled, right? It was before those characters were in the game, but they're on swago.gg. So when we scroll down a little bit here to where Ahsoka is, there's 35,000 Ahsokas in the game. Over half of those Ahsokas are Relic 9. Over half. And 27,000, which roughly comes out to about 80% of them, are Relic 8 or 9. So the players who are interacting with Ahsoka are the players who have those resources to spend. When you look at the numbers of Ahsoka, it ties into, okay, there's only 25,000 Baylan Skull. There's only 23,000 Jocasta. That kind of aligns with, okay, the players who have, Jocasta most likely have Baylan, most likely have Ahsoka, right? That those there's going to be some correlation there because it's endgame players who are interacting with this unit. When you scroll up to the next closest Galactic Legend, right? The next closest GL is up here in Lord Vader with 96,000. Now, only, you think, over 50% of his relics are between 8 and 9, but the vast majority of them, you'd argue, are 7 to 8, right? Whereas the vast majority fit into the Relic 8-9 category for Ahsoka, right? The vast majority of Lord Vader, he's at Relic 8, with Relic 7 then being the next most common. And even coming down to Leia here, most commonly Relic 9, which makes a lot of sense, right? She's a tank Galactic Legend, right? But it's still only 40% of players who have her at Relic 9. That still the vast majority of that player base is sitting there at, 7 and 8. But then even if you combine 8 and 9, it's still only 70% of the player base rather than 80% when it comes to Ahsoka. So it's just a much steeper drop in terms of who's interacting with this character, and it feels like it is it feels like it's those endgame players like myself. So we're gonna move the fat face back over here. We're gonna move the fat face back over to the corner. Off we go. All right, so let's get back into the game here. So I did just want to show, like, the data does support that's what's kind of going on, right? And again, it's those massive changes from their predecessor. But I think the next part of the problem here is that Ahsoka is kind of meaningless, right? Ahsoka is kind of meaningless, and I mean, and it's a very harsh turn of phrase, but I kind of find some truth to it. Her raid was scrapped. She's not in a raid. Jabba, Leia, and this next Pirate Galactic Legend are all inside of a raid, right? They were all a raid character. Jabba and Leia both have resource events even outside of that. You've got Smuggler's Run 2. You have Endor Escalation. I don't know if we're going to get anything for the pirate, but they had multiple reasons that it was worth it to farm them outside of the raid. For Ahsoka, there's none of that. There's no raid. There's no assault battle. There's no resource event. There's no territory battle stuff. She's nothing. She's meaningless. If you deleted Ahsoka from the game, the only thing that happens is PvP. Right? It's just her individual performance. She's not tied to anything. There's not something that players are stopped by not having Ahsoka outside of the GL event in Conquest. Like, there's nothing, right? That's a problem. Because this game, CG has made it that GLs mean something. Jabba, like, these characters mean something now. And with both Baylan and Ahsoka, and this isn't about Baylan, this is just Ahsoka, there's nothing. They're just performance-based characters, which is okay, but you can't expect players to get all excited and want to work on them when the standard that you've set is that most things lead to something. Most of them have some ulterior purpose in this game. And we've seen that going back to this data here. You've seen that with the new Bad Batch, right? As I called them on a stream with Agnards last night, and I called it the Amex Batch. There's a reason they're in the raid. There are more, at the time that I recorded this, the time I pulled this data on June 17th, there were more Relic Temple guards than there were crosshairs. Now, say what you want about, Temple Guard had a focused Datacron, but even still, that players did not want this Bad Batch. Even now that they're part of the raid and those numbers are increasing, there's still more Relic Temple guards. There's still more excitement around the team that's leading not just to the raid, but also to Jedi Master Mace Windu. And I think we're going to see similar numbers with Depa Billaba, where players are going to invest to get Mace Windu. So, to kind of come full circle on this meaningless, right? We sent a clear message to them. We want things that mean something. And that's kind of the bed that they've made for themselves. That's not, I can't blame the community for this one. CG's kind of made this for themselves, where they were really, really diligent about every character that was coming in. There was a reason to build them. And for the first time in the longest time, Ahsoka comes in and there's nothing. And we kind of reacted accordingly. The players who built her are those of us who didn't have anything else to do in the game. And everybody else is like, I've got something else to do. You know, there's a GL who maybe isn't quite as good as her, but also gets me to Smuggler's Run 2. Also gets me to Endor Escalation. Also does this. Also does that. Like, you know, isn't nearly as expensive. You know, so there's a lot of that going on that I think is leading to this, you know, Lord Failure 2.0. And then finally, the last point is she's actually is another thing. And I don't know if many people have really considered this one, but I think it's an interesting point nonetheless. She's the first Galactic Legend we've had that I would call is a Lightspeed era Galactic Legend. When Leia was released in 2023, Lightspeed bundles had not yet been released. They were released while she was farmable, but a lot of players were already making progress on Leia when they released Rey, Kylo, and Supreme Leader Kylo, and Starkiller, right? When they released those Lightspeed bundles, Leia was already in a lot of players' farms. So it just became down to, okay, who's going to farm them? But Ahsoka's the first Galactic Legend we've gotten since Lightspeed bundles. And what we're seeing is players saying, why am I going to build this new GL that isn't needed for anything, that is super expensive, when I have these Lightspeed bundles that I can catch up on, that in the time it will take me to get Ahsoka, I can get Rey, Kylo, you know, Jabba, Leia, Starkiller, get my Inquisitors up and running, and I would still be short on Ahsoka. Like, that's, I think, the other problem here that CG has kind of created and has to decide how to factor that in moving forward. Most people are going to look at Ahsoka and say, I'll just wait for a bundle. Because let's be honest, we got some stuff for Leia pretty quickly. We got some stuff for Jabba pretty quickly. It doesn't feel like we're going, you know, like if we get stuff for Ahsoka quickly, that sends a signal, you know, that's like a signal flare to the player base. Hey, don't worry about building this. Just wait for the bundle. So it's sort of this thing where they've kind of made their bed that the timing of Ahsoka just didn't match up with, I think, what they wanted. Like, you released Baylan, then we get Ahsoka, and there's all these bundles going on at the same time, and players reacted to, what am I closer to? You know, and I think that timing is important. She came out, Battle for Naboo was still a thing. They hadn't confirmed that her raid was happening. They hadn't confirmed that anything was happening for her. So she comes out at this time where it's just a character to chase. That there's no, you know, again, and if she came out and she had a raid, which again, I think her raid was canceled, and that all goes into, you know, other problems that CG's kind of run into with this. But you release her at a time where she would be needed. Or a time where, like, I think even if you released her when the Bad Batch were a thing, you'd probably see better numbers. You would have given people time to figure out, okay, Baylan or Ahsoka, kind of recoup, but because it was all at once, people just washed their hands of both of them. So, with that, kind of harsh, because her performance is significantly better than Lord Vader. We can't pretend that her performance isn't better than Lord Vader's was. But she's still not the best Galactic Legend in the game, even with all the Datacron help that she has been getting. But I say all this to then bring up the point that I don't think this Pirate Galactic Legend is going to end up like Ahsoka. Because it's a raid character. Because you know what it's building towards. You know that there's other things coming. You know that there's a purpose to it, right? I think we're going to see greater numbers. Even if this next Pirate GL is as expensive as Ahsoka, I still think players would be more willing to dump those resources in, knowing they're going to double back, you know, kind of pay it forward for a raid. My hot take here at the end is I'm wondering if they will cut back on requirements for this next GL. I truly am wondering if they're going to cut back. One of the things that I feel why they'll cut back is the data we've seen with Ahsoka. The data they've seen with Jedi Master Mace Windu. Jedi Master Mace was 6 marquee units, but only Relic 5. And the response has been a lot of players really going for them. Whereas Baylan was 5 Relic 7s, but 4 new marquees, and we don't have, I'd say we're not getting close to the number of players kind of getting Baylan as early as they did as players who are going to be getting Jedi Master Mace Windu like they are. So if I had to kind of give you a hot take here, I'm wondering, much like they did when Jabba came out after Lord Vader, where they kind of reacted and said, hey, we're going to cut back the Rex. I'm wondering if the same thing will happen with this next Galactic Legend after Ahsoka. That we're going to cut back on those requirements. We're going to really kind of hone things in a little bit because we've seen and heard your feedback that GLs like this are not really something we can do. And maybe they build back into it. Maybe they get back into it and they can slow do it. But I do think that there's a resource constraint in this community that I don't know if CG fully recognized just how bad it was, right? Because, again, of the Lightspeed bundles, because of the timing of her, that her, she's not needed for anything, and I think just because of what her predecessors were. So, I say all that, guys, to kind of say I do think she is a little bit of a failure. There's not a lot of, the players who've engaged with her are the players you would expect to. I don't think they've gotten anybody to, there's not a lot of shocking players who have Ahsoka. It's all like, yeah, of course you have Ahsoka. There's not a lot that I would say I've, in the roster reviews that I do, the accounts that have Ahsoka are the ones that I would say the vast majority are closer to, say, 13 million GP than they would be, say, close to, like, 9 million GP, right? That, like, it's those end game, late game accounts that were in a position to do that, and that's not really good for something new like this. You want more players interacting with it. And some of that, too, could have been requiring conquest units. I mean, there's a lot that you could dive in, but that's my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.